What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. Phil is checking to see if Nugget is still alive. I hope, what an awful Friday if Nugget went into cardiac arrest on a Friday afternoon right in front of Phil. Oh, there she is. Look at that.
Here's Nugget.
Show hasn't even begun. By the way, for those of you who think Phil looks a shade better, that's because the chief technical officer has sent him a ring light.
Nugget looks better too. Nugget
Phil and
looks better
Scott.
too.
Look at Nugget. Look at Nugget. What a pleasure. Already off to an insane start. I love it. Anyway, everybody, welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. Great Scott, it's time for your True Crime Phil, a show so good it happens each and every Friday. Apologies again to everyone. Phil and Scott did not know this, but we had a disastrous show last night. I had the legend, Dr. Ann Burgess. The show Mindhunter on Netflix is based off of her original work at the FBI. And she was in a remote location with a hotspot, and it didn't work too well. So that was a bummer. But she said she will come on the week of June 10th to discuss the Menendez brothers, and we will have her back on. Until then, best guests here. America's most respected detective, Fil Waters. He spent decades in law enforcement, becoming an expert at obtaining criminal confessions. He is a Marine, although he was 1 minute late today, and I reprimanded him for that. And the owner of Kindred Spirits Investigations. He also starred in the show The Interrogator. Agent Scott Duffey is director of Wilmington University's Criminal Justice Institute. He is a retired FBI supervisory special agent. Means he supervised people. He worked all sorts of crime matters, including gangs, bank robberies, fugitive task force cases. He did that for 20 years. Prior to that, he was a Commonwealth of Pennsylvania police officer. Much to discuss today. Phil, did you get your surfing and your nap in today? Did you work?
Not yet. I'm not yet. I was had another commitment before here, so apologize to the nation for being a minute late.
Literally to the nation, STS Nation. Phil, you don't strike me as the type to be late. You strike from your early years as a Marine. You strike me as a very punctual kind of person. Is that true? You are.
I am. Yes.
Is your wife the same way? When you go to a dinner,
I would. Well. I mean, not so much, not like I am, but I'd rather be 10 minutes early than 1 minute late. So
do you have to push her out of the home? If let's say just a hypothetical, you're invited to a wedding and it starts at 4 p.m. Do you need to nudge her along to make sure she's on time? And I ask because my wife will be 6 hours late.
Well, yes. I mean, of course, she's upstairs listening to everything I'm saying. So, but yes, you know, I'm if we are running a little late, it's
her fault.
It's usually not because of me.
There we go. How about you, Scott Duffey? You must be punctual too. You're an FBI guy. Is this true, Scott Duffey?
I try to be. And I try to drill that into my kids, you know, don't show up at the hour, show up a good few minutes early, like a good roll call. Have some fun, get to know some people, and engage in some private conversation or personal before work and enjoy it.
That's interesting. Fil Waters, I can't even get out of the gate say, was there such a I mean, when you were a patrol officer, was there a roll call each and every day, but not as a homicide detective, correct?
Right.
But as a patrol officer, you'd have to kind of punch the clock there. Yeah.
Yep.
And
I worked night shift. I worked early side, which was 10P to 6A. And yes, we had a roll call before shift every night.
By the way, before we go any further, let me, as you can tell, I'm in an insane mood. I don't even know why. I'm sleep deprived. I was at one of many birthday parties that I go to having kids 4, 7, and 9. And last week I went to a birthday party. Whoever has never listened to the show and is listening right now has immediately left and told everyone never to watch this, but that's okay. Anyway, I was at a party last week, and my son must have your gene, Fil Waters, because it wasn't a real one, and it wasn't even a Ferrari, but it was a Lamborghini made for a toddler, a Lamborghini. And the
Those
kid,
Ferrari has those. Yeah, we got those.
yeah, but long story short, the kid would not let my son drive it, and it turned into a horror story. And I'm an absolute sucker, and I was alone at this party. And so the only thing I could do was say, "Don't worry, son, I'll get you a Lambo," having no idea how much they would cost, these toy Lamborghinis. And every day he woke up for the next 5 days saying, where was his Lamborghini? I finally caved in and I went to Amazon. It's like $200. It's a toy Lamborghini. But the most important part of this, Phil, is I just assembled it before this show and it is now charging. And I will post pictures to Instagram. But the fact that I could assemble it, I had to put the steering wheel on, the wheels, and it is charging. I was very proud of myself. So that is the current state at my home. No one is left.
The mistake you made in that was that you got a Lamborghini and not a Ferrari. So other than that, job well done.
Thank you. And Scott Duffey, we will get to the news in a second. What time do you wake up in the morning? I'm curious. I'm curious about you, like police, law enforcement, military. Do you get up at like 5:30 in the morning? Are you one of those guys?
6:30. And even if I try to sleep in past, but 6:30 is good. Sleep in probably be 7.
Okay. Now I've got all my questions answered. We can move on. Okay. So on to the evildoer. There's a lot of stories today. And I have decided on Fridays we should try to get to a bunch of stories. So we won't spend too much time on any one story, which means I'll spend an hour on this now. But Kaylee Gonzalez, the family is back in the news, Fil Waters. And Steve Gonzalez, the mother and father, on a Facebook post made it abundantly clear that they would like to see the evildoer be convicted and then get the death penalty. But specifically, they want him to be rehabilitated, to use your phrase, by firing squad. Does this surprise you? Does this move you in any way? Is it what you would expect from a victim's family?
Look, from the beginning, my heart has always gone out to the families. And in this incident, you would want to mention their names again, I'm sure, Joel. Ethan, Maddie, Zana, and
100%, and I'm glad you just did it for me. Yes, thank you.
I would just wish that the Goncalves family would just quit talking, quit making statements. I think everybody knows how they feel. I think most, if not all, people are in support of the way they feel. But I don't think there is anything gained. You got to remember, he's going to a trial. And this constant news stuff about what they're saying, I don't think adds anything to the coming trial and the environment for that trial. And what I'm concerned about is if they end up nullifying prospective jurors because of
and that was what I was going to ask you. I mean, not only does it not add, but you're worried that it will taint a potential jury pool.
Yes.
Scott, is that a concern of yours? Because people, Phil is not the only one who says that, some of the families have been a little too vocal. Just to add on to what I was saying, Christy Gonzalez, Kaylee's mother, specifically talked about this Idaho House Bill 186, which the governor just signed. It amends existing law to provide for execution by firing squad. She talks about this on this Facebook post with a hashtag justice for Kaylee. I don't know. I would probably feel very much the same way if I thought this person committed these crimes. But do you agree with Phil that it could upset a potential jury pool in terms of who can be picked and who can't?
Always a possibility. Anything that's said in the public eye for public consumption, and totally agree. It's unfathomable for what a parent is going through, and to require them or ask them or that they just remain quiet until the trial. That's a tough ask. But as on the other side, as a professional law enforcement officer trying to ensure that the evidence and only the evidence makes its way into a court where a jury can be selected and be able to make a unified decision that will ultimately support what the parents are anticipating, right? And we've talked about the witness, the other roommate who stood frozen, right? Why would somebody wait? And there are many, many unknowns as to why a certain person reacts a certain way. And I would say here, no different. Today's day and age, it is a social media age, and every thought and every aspect of life gets put out there. So people are reading it, and a potential juror could all of a sudden say, yep, watching it, hearing it, and then all of a sudden selected for a jury. So they will have to disclose that and could potentially be taken off and not participate in. So yeah, there's a lot of information packed in that makes it very difficult. It's just a very difficult time waiting.
Dog Mom wishing everyone, great name by the way, good afternoon to STS Nation, followed by Ketchup is back in the house. She was traveling the world. Happy Aloha Friday, STS Nation and best guest. Phil, this might rub you the wrong way, but I'm curious, and I'm only bringing this up because this is coming from cyber sleuths, but it is very prevalent right now. A lot of people are discussing this. I wasn't going to bring it up, but Sally Vella did. Have you seen any of the YouTube videos of students saying that Moscow, Idaho was a drug hub, and there's a guy named Dimitri who was delivering drugs to the house, and that's why girls called friends to clean up drugs? I mean, there's all this finger pointing, as we know, at the two surviving roommates. And Phil, people think there's more to this. A lot of people say maybe it's not just Brian Koberger. They go back to that statement he made. Was anyone else arrested? When you see this sort of thing with your expertise, what do you make of it? How do you process it?
Well, with all due respect, Joel, I'm not even going to acknowledge that with an answer. So that would tell me all you need to know. Yeah. Scott Duffey, just to follow that up, by the way, L says Scott Duffey and spells it correctly with an exclamation mark. Do you feel the same way that law enforcement's doing their job? That's you guys, your former career, and you just have these cyber sleuths kind of creating stories out of the thin blue air. But I have to tell you, I get emails very frequently, almost daily, saying, hey, did you see this? Hey, did you hear this? What do you think? What do you think? Do you strictly follow what we have learned from police? And that is it, Scott Duffey.
Yeah, I have to. It's the way we, and I mean collectively, we, the investigative world, have to remain neutral. Phil and I, and many, when we go in, do search warrants, it's at our choosing, our timing, and you go and collect evidence. For something like this, when you have a tragic, horrendous incident, and then law enforcement's called, there's a lot of there's innocence there, and you're walking into somebody's world who never ever expected to have law enforcement come in, and it's just life, and law enforcement is very respectful of that, and they were called there to investigate 4 homicides, not to upturn somebody's life who does one thing or another. And I say that's all conjecture, but I would imagine anybody that's made it through college years understands that college life is this is a time when you are away from your parents, coming to adulthood, making all sorts of decisions, good and bad. And so law enforcement is not there for anything else but to find evidence against, ultimately, 4 victims, put the person who's responsible for those crimes to jail, and whatever sentence is a result of that.
Fil Waters, Scott brings up an interesting point. You have daughters and a son. Before they went off to college, did you have a talk with them? By the way, Catherine says hello from Hawaii. Did you close the door and speak to them about how they will behave in college?
Well, my youngest daughter did not go to college, and my oldest one did. Those discussions took place, and just as they were growing up, in terms of what consequences are for decisions that you make. And my son, he did go to college. In fact, he had a full NROTC scholarship, Marine Corps option to Vanderbilt.
Great university.
And was in the NROTC program there. And I will say that he was one of 4 Marines that were commissioned and sworn in by Bush 43 at the White House. Wow. So we got to pin his bars on him at the East Room of the White House. So it was pretty cool. And then he went off to a very successful career in the Marine Corps, was a human intel officer, Afghanistan, Iraq, and is now out as a captain. And so I would tell you that discussion was taken with him in a different way than it was with the girls, because he decided at the age of 12 that he wanted to be a Marine officer. It was not because of my influence. Of course, you walk into my I Love Me room in the house in Texas, and, it's Semper Fi everywhere. So it was subliminal messaging, I guess would be the best way to categorize that. But so he knew early on what the challenges would be. And even in college, I told him, you're going to be influenced in a lot of different ways. And what I would tell him as he grew up, as he would go out on his own, the last words that I would say to him were don't forget who you are. And that has served him well at this point. So he's now married, and we have our 8th and 9th grandchildren with him, and so forth and so on. So yes, those discussions were taken and offered, and by the grace of God, they've made good decisions. They're now all adults, and again, we're blessed with 9 grandchildren as a result. And that doesn't mean it was a fairy tale, with children. You're just getting started, Joel.
Well, that's why I ask Uncle Phil, because my kids are. I'm going to send my kids to Uncle Phil's house for a little Marine boot camp when they
come on over.
Once they become teenagers. They'll be shipped one by one to spend a month with Uncle Phil for training before. Sally Vella says, it's like having several professors teaching a class of their field and imparting their wisdom and experience. I feel like I'm obtaining my YouTube degree in criminology from Fil and Scott alone. That is no laughing matter, Sally Vella. This is the truth. Not only best guests, but smart guests. And as I like to say, best guests in true crime, and you're going to learn something every day, and it's better than being addicted to meth or crack. Scott Duffey will attest to that. Not because he ever did it, but he was in the FBI working gangs and drugs, so he knows firsthand. On to the next matter with Koberger, and then we will move forward. There was kind of an interesting story related to the insanity defense. This is sort of incidentally related. The Idaho Statesman did this. One of only 4 states in the nation that does not have an insanity defense is Idaho, along with Montana, Utah, and Kansas. Surprised Texas isn't in there. But it goes back to 1982 when they repealed Idaho's insanity defense statute and passed a law stating, and I quote here, mental condition shall not be a defense to any charge of criminal conduct. Scott Duffey, and I'm sure Phil wants to weigh in on this, do too many hardened criminals, bad guys, try to escape crimes using the mental illness defense? And is it a good idea, in your opinion, that Idaho, and by the way, the guy who did this was Dave Leroy, who was the former attorney general back in 1982. He's been a frequent guest on our show. He's the one that helped pass this legislation, but he makes the point that too many people were kind of using mental illness to get out of crimes that they committed. Do you agree with his notion that maybe state law should be tougher against mental illness in terms of using it as a defense?
First and foremost, any type of mental health with regards to a plea or whatnot, it rarely holds up. So, I think people could also be mistaken that, okay, so they're not found guilty, so thereby they walk free, and that's never going to happen. I have not had, with the people that I have dealt with, tried to please some sort of insanity plea and get out, and even though they might have some sort of mental health issue that led them down a road, it by all means didn't negate their culpability for the crime they committed. And so I believe the law is very, very well stated. And the whole idea is that there are mental health states, probably some better than not, that when somebody is incarcerated and has true mental health issues, they're going to get help. It may not resolve, but they are going to get help. But of course, I'm sure everybody would agree that's listening that we have a tremendous lack of mental health resources, but that not with regards to get out of jail free by an insanity plea. No, I wouldn't support anything like that.
Yeah, Phil, just to clarify what I was saying about Dave Leroy. So he came out and said that insanity, in his opinion, was being used and abused and overused, and it was leading to trials that he said became "quote unquote" expensive spectacles. And he went on to say that mental illness doesn't excuse crime. Here's his quote: "We hold them to the same standards of guilt or innocence as any other citizen, as long as the prosecution has proven all elements of the crime with which the defendant is charged." Again, they amended this law in 1982. Obviously, mental health was not looked at the way it is today, and there is a serious mental health issue in this country. But I was just curious, what you're kind of an old school guy, and this is a little bit of an old school mentality. And obviously, we need to take care and help those, as Scott just said, with more mental health resources. But what about this fact that Idaho made this change back in 1982? Do they have to consider changing it back to allow a mental health defense or an insanity defense?
No.
Can you expand?
It's been a while since I got you. You've been pretty good here about, well, let me say a couple things here. I agree with Scott. Look, the mental health issue is another issue. And ever since the do-gooders ran in there and wanted to get people released from these mental institutions that needed to be refined and regulated instead of just being shut down. So now where do we put these people? Well, we just release them. And where do they go? Well, they go to the street. And now we have a huge homeless problem. And as a result, and so, in Texas, in order for us, in Texas, you cannot just put somebody in a psych ward. If they don't want to go, they don't have to go. Now, we had an instrument that we used called an emergency mental health warrant, which we could obtain if the person was exhibiting a danger to themselves or to others. And we could get the warrant. We had to have probable cause and put that people into the psych ward there in Harris County. So in the ICU. So the legal term of insanity, and Texas does have an insanity defense, but I can tell you that the insanity defense is a very, very high bar to get over, because just somebody is crazy does not mean they are legally insane. And look, the mental health issues, people have what's called a conscience. They're born with it. It's inherent in their makeup. And when they do something wrong, they know it's wrong. That's why when you see people commit a crime, what do? They flee because they know what they did was wrong. So when you have somebody who has mental health issues, and the fact that they may be paranoid, schizophrenic, whatever those mental health issues are, bipolar, so forth and so on, it doesn't negate their lack of conscience when they go out and commit an act, especially an act of murder. And so, as Scott has already stated, they're going to be held responsible, and as they should in the system. And these factors are part of the defense, that they can walk in and talk about the mental health issues. And then that's information for the jury to decide, to determine what they're going to do in terms of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the way the system works. I can tell you that the most notable insanity defense in Texas was the Andrea Yates case. And that was the woman that drowned her 5 children in the bathtub. That was a planned event. She did it. She chased down the last child because he knew what was happening, chased him down and drowned him. Then she put the bodies on the bed, and then she called the police to inform that she had just murdered her children. And I was in the monitor room observing my partner interview her. And I can tell you, a very interesting interview. What my takeaway from it was that this woman, at that moment in time, for whatever selfish reasons she came up with, became so enveloped in that evil that she did what she did. And now, does she have mental health issues? Yes. I mean, they talked about postpartum and this and that and so forth and so on. There were a lot of people that wanted to blame her husband at the time for what occurred, because, I mean, he was nutty anyway. He was a goofy guy anyway. That was pretty obvious.
Yeah, I just saw an interview with him recently. He's okay. I mean, he's doing all right, but she did not get the death penalty for that, right?
Well, here's what happened. So she goes to trial, and I knew the attorney. In fact, George Parnham was the attorney, fine attorney in Houston, very well known. He's up there in that upper tier of attorneys, and he always got the crazy women. He always got the crazy women cases. The woman that ran over her husband, the dentist in the I can't think of the area, but ran over him repeatedly in the parking lot after catching him with his girlfriend, the dentist. And in fact, I think she may have just gotten out. She did 25 years for that. But anyway, he got her. He got Andrea Yates. I think there's one other one that he got. And he got one of mine, an Iranian female, I think I've mentioned it here, 27 years old, who buried her 2-month-old baby alive. So George seemed to get those types of cases for whatever reason. And in the first trial with Andrea Yates, she was found guilty of capital murder. And I do not remember if she was assessed the death penalty or not. I'm thinking she may have been. But the bottom line was, regardless of the first trial, she did get a second trial and was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And she was sent to a state mental hospital in Rusk. And if she's ever cured, she can walk out the door. And now I think she was sent there for a period of time. I may be wrong about this, but she was sent there for a period of time. And then once that time expired and she was ruled cured, then she could leave. But I believe, I mean, maybe somebody here in the STS Nation can correct me, but I believe that she is still in that institution by her own choice. So these insanity defenses, again, I think it's interesting from my perspective that would you say 5 states that no longer have insanity defenses?
Yeah, it's 5 states. Idaho. I think actually it's 4 states. One of 4 states: Idaho, Montana, Utah, and Kansas. Now, what I'm about to bring up, I purposely did not want to bring up, but since we're talking about insanity and mental illness, horrific story. I believe it's out of Oklahoma. I have no notes on this, but I saw a bunch of stories. I think Phil knows what I'm about to say. It's a 12-year-old girl who stabbed her 9-year-old brother and killed him, stabbed him right in the chest. She obviously had a lot of issues going on. She was self-harming, cutting herself. There's body cam footage of this. The girl is hysterical, literally saying, "I'm so sorry, mom. I'm so sorry, mom. I'm so sorry, mom." This happened back in January, I want to say, and she said that like a demon possessed her, and she's not fully aware of why she even did this, but her brother is dead. The stepfather, as I understand it, served hard time, committed, I think, murder, and got out, or a very serious crime. Fil Waters, just back to you on this. How do you handle a situation like that? I mean, can you prosecute? I think legally she could be prosecuted. I don't think charges have been brought yet. But she's 12 years old. What do you do?
Well, I think she can be prosecuted. I don't know what the law is in Oklahoma. I'm from Oklahoma, born and raised in Tulsa, so I'm familiar with the territory. And well, in Texas, I think the age is 10. You can be over the age of 10. I think you can be charged as a juvenile, of course. But well, I will tell you about that case, and I'll make a kind of a broad statement. This business that parents were sold into probably 40 something years ago, 40 plus years ago, of children with attention deficit hyperactivity.
Mm-hmm.
That's another lie that was told to parents. And how do we resolve that issue?
Well, she was being medicated, and the mother thinks
she was being medicated because of ADHD.
And the mother thinks that played a role. Yes.
Well, I will tell you from my experience, and this will really get them going out there.
Oh boy.
That when you feed children narcotics and drugs to alter their behavior, you better buckle up and get ready for the end results. Now, my experience, I worked narcotics for a number of years. I've seen, and that was about the time, late 80s, early 90s, when this ADHD crap started in full force. And if I'm not mistaken, the psychologist that came up with this stuff, or the psychiatrist that came up with this stuff, is dead now. But I want to say that he wrote an article that proclaimed that this ADHD stuff that he had conjured up was all based on false science. I mean, this psychology stuff is philosophical in nature, and it is all theory. So then we have a self-fulfilling prophecy where we create the theory, and then it becomes reality for a whole bunch of people. And I've had friends of mine that have put their kids on that stuff, that Ritalin and the other medications. And my experience has been, in fact, my youngest daughter, there was a recommendation from somebody that we had a meeting that's what this little therapist was recommending. And of course, my question to the therapist was, do you have any kids? She did not. And I said, how old are you? And she was like, 17 years old. No, she was older than that, but had no life experience. And I said, so you're sitting here telling me that I need to medicate my child to alter their behavior? Well, I'm leaving this meeting. And I did. I got up and walked out. I was done. And I've had friends of mine that have put their kids on it, and some of them will have the same attitude I have, but then they're going, well, I just know that it changed them. Well, of course it did. Of course it did. You're going to change the way they behave, but you're not going to change their judgment. And what I saw, Ritalin and these other types of drugs that are used to regulate this hyperactivity nonsense and attention deficit stuff, is anything that begins with the 4 letters meth, that is speed. So Ritalin is a low-grade speed given in doses that creates the opposite effect. But by the time that kid has been dosed that stuff for a prolonged, and look, I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on television. I'm just telling you what I have seen in my experience of dealing with these types of cases and these types of kids. By and large, by the time, if they start giving these, and some of them are given to these kids when they're 8, 9 years old. I mean, 7, 8, and it's more prevalent among boys than it is among girls. So I was a little surprised to see that this girl has been given this medication. Yeah. And the end result is, depending on how that individual child responds to that medication, in my experience, and you can call it anecdotal or whatever, but I can tell you in my experience, what I saw was by the time they're 17 years old, you've got yourself a speed freak whose judgment has now been altered in ways that it may never get corrected. And I mean, I made scenes when I was in narcotics where the one stands out to me. A 17-year-old young man was running around with a knife and had cut his father up and was running around trying to find other people to attack. And I recognize that's anecdotal, but that was one of the cases that really stuck out in my mind. And so parents are being sold that this is how we fix our kid by giving them some sort of pill. And that started years ago. And now here we are now with another lie trying to convince children that they're not what they were created to be. So by the same group of people. So I'm just telling you, it all goes back to the root of this, which is evil. And this child, this 12-year-old, oh my gosh.
It's one of the saddest stories I've heard, for sure.
Well, the consequences of what she's going to live with for the rest of her life is just, it's going to be indescribable. So my concern for her now is what will be the end result for her. And
by the way, my 2 cents on that too. I'm not going to name names, but why are you interviewing the mother? I mean, what are you going to get out of interviewing the mother of this girl whose life is just shattered? Scott, I want to get your take on that for real quick too. Tali in Israel, happy Friday, STS, Fil, Scott, Nugget, and of course Joel. I come after Nugget. That's okay, Tali. I can handle it. Did you cry yourself to sleep yesterday? Yes, I did. It was a disaster. But we got through it together. And I got to say, STS Nation is always there to help pick me up. You guys tweeted and sent me very nice messages. Marina in Spain. Hello, STS Nation. If Nugget doesn't show up, we riot. This is obviously pre his appearance. Good evening from Norway. Nugget has Magnum PI complex. Scott, back to this for a minute. It's got to break your heart. This is a 12-year-old girl that committed the worst crime imaginable. But from a legal standpoint, from the law perspective of the law, do you feel like she needs to be charged? I mean, like, how do you handle these situations? I'm confused myself. I mean, I would like to think that they can just get her help and counseling, but do you think that's enough, Scott? I want you to get hate mail.
When you say it's enough, she's a child, and there's no doubt in my mind that children need to be treated differently than adult criminals. So without knowing everything about leading up to, including just from what you're saying and her pleading of mercy and apologetic to her mother and the narcotics she's put on and what are the results, it is so complex. I don't think I can just say yes, she should be charged, or no, she shouldn't be charged. It's so complex, and this is what weighs on the system. And unfortunately, it's not the first and not the last, right? This is I believe there are plenty of cases of just horrible actions of a child, and we're all left wondering what led up to it.
Well,
So
look, let me, I don't mean to interrupt you, Scott, but while it's on my mind, this didn't happen in a vacuum, by the way. I think, Joel, you just read where she was self-mutilating and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is always a process.
She also told friends, allegedly, and the friends that she had these thoughts, but the friends were too scared to tell any of the parents and did not say anything. They came forward after the fact. So, yeah, it didn't happen.
Yeah. So she's thinking about this, and that's where people need to say something. But and we don't know what the situation is with the parents and so forth and so on. You asked the question about why did they go up and ask this woman a question? Why did she even allow them to have an audience with her? That would be my if this happened to me, I would tell them. I would tell them it's none of your business. Get out of my face and get those cameras out of my yard.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put up with it, but we're not in that world. Everybody wants their 15 minutes or whatever, for whatever reason. And maybe this is a way for her to grieve. I don't know, but I tell you, there's just a whole bunch. None of this, when this stuff starts, none of it goes right.
If someone said to me, "Hey, I've got an exclusive interview with this woman," I would say no thanks, but it seems like the media can't turn down interviews, but
you're old school. You're old school on that aspect, Joel.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I just I don't think you gain anything from it. No more accurate statement has ever been made than by Sandy Grogg. Nugget is better looking than all three of you. I would have to agree with that. Michelle Pretorius in South Africa admired everyone's persistence on yesterday's disastrous show and couldn't help laughing at it all. As to why Phil was 1 minute late, it is called Hawaiian time, Joel. By the way, shout out to Michelle in Cape Town, South Africa, too. And look, one of my favorites, Ski Hat Sarah, who likes but makes fun of the way I say her name. And she says, I am late too, Phil. Moving on to stories here. Oh, look at this. SP says, Scott Duffey reminds me of how cool Delaware was to be raised in back in the day. You had guys like Scott Duffey. Even though, Duffey, you're from Pennsylvania or no?
Connecticut, born and raised, and then my whole adult life, Pennsylvania. Worked in Delaware.
Yeah, so he's incidentally a what do you call him? A Delawarean? Is that such a thing?
Delawarean. Yeah, Delaware.
Yeah, well, look at that. Moving on to this story, Scott Duffey. This just took my breath away, and I still I'm not processing this and why this isn't on the front page of every newspaper right now. Almost 30 children were reported missing in the Cleveland area over a 2-week span beginning in May. It's something a local police chief said he has never seen in his 33-year career. This chief is named John Majoy. He is the chief of the Newburgh Heights Police Department, but he also is the president of a nonprofit called Cleveland Missing. And he said the number of 12 to 17-year-olds reported missing has remained at unprecedented levels throughout the month. There's always peaks and valleys with missing persons, but this year it is an extraordinary number. Scott Duffey, what is going on here? 27 juveniles under the age of 18, 27 went missing between May 2nd and May 16th. That's a 2-week period. What is this?
Is that? I mean, what are they
I
all
mean,
still missing to this day? Is it?
apparently, I don't understand this. I mean, some people, the chief was saying, who's the head of this, I saw an interview, said that, they're runaways. But if you don't know where these kids are, I mean, do you have to be concerned that there's an abductor, that there's a serial abductor, that there's a serial killer? I mean, this is a ridiculously high number of young kids in one concentrated area. Have you heard of anything like this? Am I missing
No,
something?
and that's. I mean, that sounds very high, and even if with regards to missing walkaways, runaways, it'd be interesting to see where they're walking away, running away from. Or they all have just exited the house without any prior police reports of history of leaving. It would be really interesting to see. I know working in the FBI in Delaware, even though we did not work missing children cases, we worked missing children cases, but we would quickly try to assess with the local law enforcement and, of course, the family members, foster care, wherever they walked away from. Is there any endangerment for, were they abducted? First, we try to rule out if they were abducted versus, hey, you have a history of walking away and then being found the next town over. Not that we would work the case any less, but, get NCMEC, National Children Exploited, getting them involved in order to give whatever the local resources need to get these children found. And then, of course, the unfortunate thing I would see that they would be found, returned, and then ultimately, right back, leaving again, right? So but those were far and few in between. And this is, in and around Wilmington, which was primarily my area in Newcastle County. So to have 30 within a 2-week span, and if it'd be interesting to see if they are identifying them as walkaways as opposed to possible abducted. You try to work the case really quick to determine that it is an abduction versus a walkaway, and you can pretty much tell that early on. It is frightening when you have absolutely no history and nothing to indicate that they walked away. Typically, you're working social media. That's where the FBI comes in with regards to their analytical support, and quickly jump on their social media and try to put a few pieces of the puzzle together, and then you have an idea. It's still frightening that they're gone, but for a walk away to it's treated a little bit different. It doesn't make the parent necessarily feel all that better, but wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. By the way, Kitty, after our Adderall conversation, hey, STS family, listening while I weed eat, LOL. Followed here by Tolly, Phil, the hair is fire today. Hello, Joel, Phil, and Scott. Happy weekend. Phil, if you were the police chief here, oh, by the way, Phil, Nick Brennan, I just saw this name.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. I am Abby Taha, Phil's other daughter. I'm back on my husband's YouTube account. So is this Abby? Is that what I'm reading? I missed her Friday because she told me she was going to be on today, and she apologized.
Aloha, Abby. Yeah.
That's why. Okay. So there we go.
Looks
Phil,
like
if you were
it looks like she's going from bad to worse. So she's moving from Nebraska to Kansas.
Sorry to hear that. Abby.
And that's just a joke for all my Nebraska and Kansas friends.
Sorry, Abby. Ta ha ha. Fil Waters, am I making more of this? 27 juveniles under the age of 18 reported missing in a 2-week period in the beginning of May. If you were the police chief who ran this nonprofit, or you're the Cleveland police chief, What are you doing right now?
Probably banging your head against the wall, trying to figure out what the heck is going on. To use a technical law enforcement term, that's weird.
Yeah, I mean, does this I don't know, does this raise concern on your part? I mean, what is
Well,
this?
of course it does. Of course it does. It would anybody, but that is
I mean, I immediately thought of the Atlanta child murders. I mean, that's worst case scenario, right? But is it something as sinister as that?
well, I would think there's got to be something sinister going on with 27 kids missing. And what did you say, in 2 weeks or something off the wall thing?
From May 2nd to May 16th, 27 juveniles under the age of 18 reported missing.
I guess my take on that would be is, what connection do those 27 juveniles have with each other?
Well, he went on to say that whether they're being trafficked or whether they're involved in gang activity or drugs, we don't know. He's kind of implying that there's something, there's a reason for it, but he doesn't really give a reason.
Well, and that may be just the typical law enforcement response. We're just not going to sit up here and speculate, because that just gives to more speculation by the public. I mean, that's a double-edged sword, because what they want to do at the initial part of that is to get the community's anxiety down. And how do you make a statement like that to make that happen? So is this some sort of weird, isolated, the stars aligned in this 2-week period and this is what's happening, and it's some random event, or is there some targeting involved here of these kids? And the big question is, why are they missing? Are they missing because they want to be missing, because they are involved in some sort of other collective activity? I mean, who knows? Those are the big questions. And so for the chief, I guess the issue is trying to say enough without saying too much. And that's a rough spot to be in. And the human trafficking aspect of it, I mean, I know that's I know those are buzzwords now, but I would question that. I would think it's got something more to do with affiliations with some groups, and this is maybe some sort of a planned event by those groups. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating just like everybody else, but my first take on it would be, if I'm the detective working it, I want to see what's the association between these 27 kids.
Well, you get called for your expertise by the media. Has anyone called you about this case specifically?
You're the first one that's mentioned it.
Wow. Well, I'm always ahead of the curve, Phil. We know that.
Well, you're on the cutting edge, Joel. That's why we like.
I'm usually on the cutting room floor is what I am. Look at this. Shaquille O'Neal weighing in about your son's alma mater. Vanderbilt is the cream of the crop. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, we have a guest on the show named Harvard lawyer Lee she has a massive following. And she not only went to Vanderbilt, but finished first in her class and then went to Harvard Law School, where I believe she finished first in her class. So look at this. Patty David. Hello from Syracuse, New York. Love Fil and Scott and adore Joel for all he does to bring us the best. Patty, by the way, a little known Joel factoid. I spent 2 years, maybe 3, from like 5 to 7 or 8 in Manlius, New York, which is a suburb of Syracuse. My beloved father taught me to ride a bicycle there. Thought it would be a good idea to take me to the top of a hill and let me figure it out on the way down. And it ended very badly. It's something you never forget. Luckily, they were my baby teeth that came out, but my 2 front teeth no longer existed after that experiment, and my mother was not happy with my father. But that is neither here nor there. Moving along, we all know Jeffrey Epstein. This is interesting too. He penned a letter to Larry Nassar. If you guys don't know who Larry Nassar is, he is a convicted pedophile / sex offender who was abusing the women on the national gymnastics team for many, many years. Many, many victims. He was sentenced to multiple life sentences in prison. And it turns out that shortly before Jeffrey Epstein hanged himself in his Manhattan jail cell, he had penned a letter from behind bars to another high-profile pedophile, Larry Nassar. The note was never received by the disgraced U.S. gymnastics team doctor. And how did we find this out? The AP, the Associated Press, FOIA'd over 4,000 pages of documents which came in. We also found out from these documents that 2 weeks before Jeffrey Epstein died, Fil Waters, officials reported that Epstein, 66, was sitting with a vacant expression on his face in the corner of his cell. He was tortured by the unending sound of a broken toilet that would not stop running. This is all according to this FOIA. Phil, I've never bottom lined ask you this one. Did Jeffrey Epstein commit suicide or was he killed in prison? Let's stir up more jail.
Well, I mean, everybody's speculating. I don't know. I really, I mean, all I know for certainty is that he died in prison. So, there's.
I was sure Phil was going to say,
not knowing what all the evidence is, it's really hard for me to come to a conclusion. And I think it's just one of those that what we know, I mean, I'm usually not middle of the road on any topic, but on this one, I just got to say that it could be the one. And not knowing all the evidence and so forth and so on, I can see where, given he was in solitary and a dripping faucet might tend to drive one crazy. I know that I had a similar experience here a couple of days ago where one of our smoke detectors needed a new battery, and so it started chirping. Well,
that drives me insane.
It started chirping at about 1:00 in the morning, and it continued to chirp until we got it fixed the next day. So, I would imagine that I could parallel that with a dripping faucet. And if I were to sit on a daily basis and listen to this constant freaking chirping, it might drive me nutty.
I may have gently tried to toss Nugget up to the detector to try to wiggle the battery out, but now
no. I called our
that was a joke. I would never do that.
Who had a ladder that we could get up to it.
Yeah. That's one of those things that will drive me over the edge. Scott Duffey, it doesn't end there. So the information from this FOIA, again, 4,000 pages from the Associated Press obtained. What's interesting, by the way, I was sure Phil was going to say something to the effect of, there's no friggin' way this guy committed suicide. 100% was murdered, but he didn't say that. He always he throws you for a loop. But here, Scott Duffey, Epstein appears to have tried to adapt to prison life. He signed up for a kosher meal plan. He had requested just days before he ended up dead, through his lawyer, permission to exercise outside 2 days before he kills himself through the commissary for $73.85. Oh, he spent $73.85 in the commissary. By the way, he's worth like $500 million. So a small portion of his wealth. But he spent money on an AM/FM radio and headphones. So people are saying, he was starting to, get in sync with jail life. He got this radio, and why would he just go and kill himself? Do you have any thoughts one way or the other on this high profile suicide?
I'll give a Phil answer.
Please
I
do.
don't have. I love a good conspiracy theorist case. I really do. They are just awesome to try to delve into and then say, oh, it's solved. No, absolutely no way. And then you see something or hear something, and this is one of those. It's going to last to the end of time. I don't think we'll be able to put it to bed completely. What do I believe? I don't know. I would agree. I would side with Phil on this one. If I could be one of the investigators involved and really kind of see for myself, I think I would have a better understanding and an answer. But I'm just like everybody else, where we hear what we hear, and there's a little bit of evidence that points one way, and then a little bit of evidence points the other way. Hence the conspiracy.
Neither one of these guys wants to go out on a limb on this one. They know that Big Brother is watching, and they're fearful.
I could care less about that aspect of it. If that would, I could give a crap about that. But look, I just, I tell people all the time, that I take an objective approach to these things, and then once I let the evidence lead me where I need to be, I'll make a conclusion. But in this case, I don't have enough evidence.
By the way, neither here nor there, but got some exciting news. Phil is a legend, so he already knew he is going to be a speaker at CrimeCon, and then we worked our magic, and Scott Duffey will be attending CrimeCon, as will STS. We're going to be on Podcast Row, and we're going to do a live show at CrimeCon. It's September 22nd, so you're getting early notice, but would love to see as many members of STS Nation showing up with their Nugget signs, photos of Nugget on the popsicle stick, photos of Fil and Scott on the popsicle stick, and we will.
We need to have some merch.
Well, we're definitely bringing the merch, but we need to. I want to create an uproar. I want CrimeCon to say, what is this podcast? Who are these people that have infiltrated? Who are the 50,000 strong that have come in? We only have room for 5,000. So that's, by the way, Carm is coming. I'm going to strap her into the minivan, and I'm going to send her up. I might even come with the cutout and walk with Carm and the cutout there. So it's going to be quite the scene. I hope everyone can make it.
Let me say something there. CrimeCon is a lot of fun. Yeah. So I was there last year in Vegas. This year it's going to be in Orlando, Florida, and it's just it's a lot of fun, a lot of like-minded people, and it is so popular that the attendance has to be capped. So there were 5,000 people in Vegas. I think that's probably going to be the same cap in Orlando. So yeah, pretty cool. It'll be fun.
Ski Hat Sarah, we have a serious mental health problem in America. The whole system should be evaluated and changed. Follow here. Phil will appreciate this. I am a lib, but I agree with Phil on this one. We need proper care for our severely mentally ill. Yes, we do. Homelessness is a real problem. Just go to LA. You'll see that. Many of the homeless are victims of crime. I think we all agree that there is a major mental health problem in the country, and it needs to be addressed. As Max says hello from Phil's hometown, which he can only look at on a Google map now, as he is in Hawaii. By the way, let me know if you like this. We're going from story to story here, but I think it's more interesting on a Friday. The next one up, Danny Masterson, a former Scientologist. He was tried a while back ended in a hung jury. He was tried again. A Los Angeles jury Wednesday found that the 70s show actor is guilty of 2 counts of forcible rape. They spent 6.5 days deliberating and then came back. They were deadlocked on the 3rd rape charge. Phil, whenever a jury is out that long, they say it usually plays into the defense's hand, but not in this case. What do you think about this? That he was apparently drugging women. It was years ago, and pretty big time celebrity, and the law caught up with him.
Okay, well, this will get him going.
Hmm.
I think the prosecution of these cases where these allegations are made from 20 to 30 to 40 years ago, I think are ridiculous. And there have been laws that have been accommodated because most of these cases, if not all of them, at least the high profile ones that I've seen, and I don't have any particular liking for this goober head. I mean, I don't, I didn't ever watch that television show. I didn't even know who he was.
It was big. It was a big show. I
remember it, but I just never watched it. I lived through the 70s. I didn't need to watch a contrived television show about it. So, I grew up in the 70s. So I would just say that, and this guy, I mean, so he's got all the a Scientologist. I mean, we could do a whole freaking week on that nonsense, right? So, I just have to say that, and it appears to me to be, if he did that stuff, because you got to remember that, and I'm all about evidence. Look, I don't look at these cases from an emotional perspective. And I know we're going to get a bunch of hate mail and all that, and all the, comments about how insensitive I am and blah, 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 blah. But having said that, I'm telling you, these women popping up 20 years later, 25 years later, 30 years later, 35, some of them 40 years later, and claiming these things happened to them. And it just comes down to he said, she said. And I'm sorry, but I have worked enough of these types of cases that just because someone comes, and it doesn't make any difference which sex they are, whether male or female, and they come across with this kind of an allegation, it requires an element of the truth. So just because someone comes forward and says, there's a lot of reasons why people will come forward and say, oh yeah, he did this to me, or she did that to me, and so forth and so on. And look, I made a traffic stop one night in the middle of the night on some woman who was flying down the freaking road in her Mercedes, and she wouldn't get out of the car. She wanted to stand up in the freaking through the sunroof and talk to me. And I'm like, okay. So what do you think her excuse is for speeding?
She was afraid of.
She'd just been sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
And I said, well, where are you going? Well, I'm going home. Really? Okay. So are you married? Yes. So here's the deal. This woman was giving me an excuse because she thought that my stopping her was going to expose her in her adulterous act with whoever it was that she was now coming home from. So I'm just telling you, and each story is different, and that's not to diminish the women. Because look, I have worked the real live sexual assaults. Trust me, I've seen it, and my heart breaks for the women that I've had to sit and interview, and we captured the people that did it, by the way. So I'm just, when I hear this stuff, and when I saw this guy, I think the first one was a mistrial, right?
Yeah, mistrial.
I was really surprised the guy got convicted. I mean, he's a scoundrel for a whole lot of different reasons than this. But again, look, if I'm the detective looking at this stuff, I go back and I'm like, what were the circumstances? What's the environment at that time? And these women that are now claiming that they're getting sexually assaulted by these now celebrities, what was their motive at the time for even engaging with this person? Did they think that it was going to somehow, if they did what they needed to do, it was going to further their career? I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff going on here. These are a whole lot of moving parts. And so
you tripped me up with you tripped me up with a sunroof. Did you allow her to speak to you through the sunroof, or did you make?
Oh yeah,
her...
it was just so entertaining that I thought, you know what? I mean,
police
because
officer.
I knew I wasn't going to write her a ticket. I didn't make traffic stops for the purpose of writing tickets. In fact, I wrote very few tickets. I did it because I wanted to see if there was something else going on that would be a lot bigger duck than just writing somebody a ticket. So that was, and I was struck with the humor of the situation. And what I told her was, I said, look, I said, well, I asked her, do you want to make a report? Well, of course she doesn't want to make a report. And I said, well, okay. I said, tell me this, I'm going to ask you to do this. When you get home, I want you to explain to your husband why you got stopped on 2978. Oh yeah, okay, I will. Well, she's not going to tell him anything, right? Now she may think, and I may have said to her, and I'll call and check on you, because I did have her information. So she may have gone home and admitted at least to getting stopped, but I'm sorry. I take, like I do with every investigation, every accusation, I want to see the evidence and I want to see where it leads me. And it's always a journey for the truth. These old cases, these old sexual assault cases, which always boil down to he said, she said, decades later, I'm sorry. I just don't, the credibility of those accusations I find to be faulty.
Send your hate mail to scottduffey@hatemail.com.
Oh, yeah. This will get it. This will get them going.
Mac 19. Phil, it happened in Clear Lake, I think, followed by Shaquille O'Neal. Clara Harris was the one that ran over her husband. And yes, she got out in 2015.
Yeah.
Scott Duffey. So curious on your take on that. And here's another story I wasn't going to bring up. We're actually going to do this Monday night, this story. I believe his name is Matthew Nilo. He is an attorney in New Jersey. He was just arrested and indicted for being a serial rapist back in Boston, 2007 and 2008. Now, unlike this story, and I don't know all the details of Masterson, but in this story, the victims reported it. They couldn't find who the perpetrator was. But again, they used that genetic genealogy, and they tracked this guy down and just arrested him. He had just proposed to his fiance, I think 2 weeks earlier. He was an attorney, a very clean-cut looking guy. In that case, justice must be served, right? If they're tracking him down and the victims at the time alerted authorities, they just couldn't track this guy down then.
Yeah. So on this the New Jersey one, were they all stranger rapes? Were they dates? I don't. And so do you have a stranger out there however many years ago in Boston, raping women. Women are coming forward. They're making their allegations. They're doing exactly just the way Phil said. It's you know, are you going to the police department to report this horrible thing that happened to you? No. So obviously it's as a police officer, then okay, then this is not a crime. So these reported crimes go unsolved, and stranger rapes often go unsolved, especially when somebody flees the area, and they flee the area for a reason, and they're not stopping. And so that's why I'm asking if there's a little bit more information, or are these,
it doesn't say exactly, but here's what we do know. He allegedly, this is this Matthew Nilo now. So he was living in Weehawken, New Jersey. That's right across the Hudson River from Manhattan. Again, he was a lawyer. He was just recently engaged, but he grew up in the Boston area. Yeah. He's accused, and he was a big partier. There's pictures of him online urinating in his, dorm room hallway on the rug, as some college students tend to do. But he allegedly attacked 4 victims in the Terminal Street area of the Charlestown neighborhood in Boston between 2007 and 2008. Ironically, this guy was a cyber attorney, I guess dealing in cyber matters. He was charged with 2 counts of kidnapping, charges of aggravated rape, 1 count of assault with intent to rape, and 1 count of indecent assault and battery. He waived his extradition. Now, police said all 4 attacks were connected through DNA, which was identified through the genealogy database 23andMe after family members voluntarily sent samples. It's unclear if, if you went on a date and then raped them, or just randomly picked these victims. Does that even matter?
No, it doesn't matter. But and the key is they reported it. A crime took place. They felt absolutely victimized, and so they reported it. And so whether it was a date rape, whether it was a stranger rape, either way, they weren't able to identify him, right? So we do have, however they met. I guess I'm just getting into where they off the street in an alleyway or through some dating app. But the common denominator is these 4 women, I'm guessing unknown to each other, but the common denominator being him. However it took place, they did it almost probably contemporaneously. They were assaulted, they were victimized, and they did exactly what they need to do by going to law enforcement. And so thereby you have 4 crimes that took place. And I think it's apple and oranges, even referring to this guy, Masterson, this actor. So I read a little bit after he was found guilty, but I was even taken back. Wow, 20 some odd years ago. I was kind of surprised that a criminal charge was brought forth versus a civil case. But I don't know enough about the 2 that he was found guilty on. Were they somewhat recent, or were they all dated? So I don't know enough about, but I would say that's apple and oranges.
But the difference is that and I don't know all the details of the Masterson case, but these are women who came forward much later on. The difference here is that in Boston, they came forward right away, right?
And I would agree. It's not negating that the women in the other case were any less of a victim. It just, there is, law enforcement has to deal with what they have, and if the evidence is not there, the evidence is not there. And if something is reported later on, it is a he said, she said. It doesn't negate that it could have been, but law enforcement has to deal with exactly what they have, evidence. And so if it's not there, it's not there. It by any means not minimizing what might have happened to the victim. But here you have cases of women who are assaulted, and if it started as a date, but ended badly, they know, a victim knows, and so thereby made the reports to law enforcement. And of course, he being a high-profile individual, a professional individual, yet all the more unknown, the lawyer, he leaves, and so thereby he's never been arrested, and so his DNA is not in the system like a fingerprint, and so it's not in CODIS, and so thereby, but yet you have the common denominator through good police work. Hey, we have 4 victims, and you have a common DNA sample, so thereby we have one perpetrator, and great police work. And now you turn it over to genealogy, because that's where our future is going with regards to being able to identify victims. That's how the Golden State Killer was found, right, through genealogy. And
by the way,
and
the woman who helped find him is named Barbara Ray Venter. And guess who will be our best guest on Monday night to discuss this? Barbara Ray Venter, because we do not mess around on our show. Look at it, Phil. You know who does mess around? Ski Hat Sarah. Joel, I love the way you say Sarah. It came up on another show. I have a Jersey accent, Phil. There's nothing I can do about it. I tend to actually think I don't have any accent, but as I got older, people told me that I do, in fact, hold on to a bit of a Jersey accent, for which I have pride. Fil Waters, this continues a little bit here. The FBI pulled a clever move here. They told the fiance that there was a package down front that was too big to be delivered to him. And they told the fiance, and the fiance said, "Hey, honey, Matthew, go down and get that package." And when he went down, the FBI was there, surrounded him, and arrested him. But that's a maneuver that Scott Duffey might work out to arrest someone. But what I thought was interesting is, and I'm not familiar with this, and we've had discussions about this because apparently there's a major problem in the United States, but the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, a federal program designed to help process a backlog of rape kits, was used in this investigation after the Boston Police Department reached out in October. I don't know if this question is better suited for Scott, Phil, because you're not a federal guy, but I will let you weigh in here, Fil Waters. Apparently, there are a lot of rape kits that are in evidence rooms all around the country that they just don't have the resources to test them. But do you know anything about this Sex Assault Kit Initiative, this federal program? Are you familiar with it at all?
Well, only from the degree. I don't know if it was this particular program, but I think I've mentioned on here before that many years ago at the Houston Police Department, our lab had stacks of SANE kits, and they were just not being processed. And that was, a lot of factors: poor management, not enough time, not enough technicians, not enough money, blah, 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 whatever the excuses were at the time. And I don't know if this initiative you're talking about was a result of those types of things in a lot of different places. I think we got some money from the state. We may have gotten some money from the feds to process those cases. And of course, as they got processed, then they started clearing sexual assault cases. So I am familiar with it from that aspect, from the local level, where we did have that effect. And by the way, these people that are disagreeing with me, and I would just ask that you listen to what I'm saying and how I'm saying it based on my experience and what I have done in these types of investigations. I'm not responding to these questions about sexual assault from an emotional perspective, which is what these people are responding by and from. So with all due respect, if you want to disagree with me, that is fine. But please listen to what I am saying. I'm talking to you about, as we look at these types of cases as detectives, as people that investigate these things. And we would want to get to the point where we are letting evidence lead us to where we need to be in a journey for the truth. Because I will tell you this, I have seen people who have been falsely accused of sexual assault, and the evidence has shown that they were not guilty, did not participate in it, not even close. And then the question becomes then, where do those folks go to get their reputations back, their good reputations back? So this cuts both ways. So please get off of the emotional stuff about, I don't understand and this and that. I probably understand it more than you do. So for all those that have suffered with that type of a crime being committed upon them, my prayers go out to you. And I just pray that you can at some day get past it. I know it sticks with them. I know and it doesn't matter whether it's male or female. And I've worked both. So please, this constant barrage of, I don't understand. You need to get over it and listen to what I'm saying, not just cherry pick the things you want to hear. So that's the last time I'm going to talk about that, but I'm getting just weary of listening to this stuff.
Phil's getting riled up. Good thing it's a Friday. He's got his horses. His therapy horses will calm him down, as well as Nugget.
Give my bull a pat on the head.
Yeah. How is Nugget doing? I worry that Nugget might just keel over for some reason. She's
right here.
She's awake, or is she listening?
She's right beside me. She's taking her little nap. She's right beside me.
Beautiful. Anna Banana, Scott, before we get into this sex assault kit initiative, she wants to know where in Connecticut. Are you able to reveal that? I know you're high profile. I don't want people stalking you. Can you give us a rough idea of where in Connecticut? And by the way, look at this. Aloha 808 says Aloha Friday. Phil, nice shirt. Never heard of Aloha 808 till now. Aloha. And by the way, Vonda K, 27 under 18 went missing in a 2-week period in May. Source, she's asking. I appreciate that question as a journalist. It is coming right from the proverbial horse's mouth, from the police chief in that area who runs a missing children's nonprofit group in the Cleveland area. It's not coming from anyone but him, the top law enforcement official in that town. Scott Duffey, where in Connecticut?
Anna Banana, the city of Norwalk, a great city. Loved it. Still have family there. And fourth town up from New York, from the New York border, right off 95.
Catherine here is saying, I have no idea if this is true, at least $1,500 per child for trafficking, going back to that story. Scott Duffey, Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, this federal program. The reason I'm bringing this up, again, we have Sarah Ford on frequently. She's a victims' rights attorney and a very good one. And this is one of her missions, to get the word out about this, because there's so many assault victims who are not getting answers just because there are no resources to test these kits. But are you familiar with this initiative? It's this federal program to help with a backlog of rape kits.
Yeah, I do remember hearing this, and this initiative goes back a few years. It was in the making to get federal funding, because you started to hear, as maybe it was broken by different news outlets, that there were thousands upon thousands of kits across the country where departments doing a great job in getting these kits secured and put into evidence, but lacking a particular suspect or whatnot. Now you're not doing a one-to-one match where the lab can say, hey, give us the evidence and let us test it. So these kits were just finding their way, and then of course through the years just winding up on a shelf and on an evidence shelf. And so as the recently, and I'm not sure when it started, but it was a call for, hey, there's a certain amount of money that that requires to get these kits tested, and where are they going to go? You have some labs, but then you have many departments that have no lab to send it to. So I know the federal government got involved. I know the FBI got involved with regards to their labs, and just being able to say, let's get these kits once and for all tested, so we can have something to whether to put it into CODIS or whatever, but at least see if there's a sample that can be identified. So it's a great program, but you're talking about years of a backlog, and so it will take some time, but moving in the right direction. And if money is a key, I'm glad to see the government getting that money to where it needs to. So this backlog can have a resolution once and for all, and start to see some potential arrests coming out of it.
Very well said, Scott Duffey. Followed by this. Back to the other story, the FBI from Brianna should be on the suspicious children missing persons. Scott Duffey, is the FBI undoubtedly looking into that? Why so many kids went missing? Because it might be tough for a smaller jurisdiction, even the Cleveland Police Department. Do you think the feds are already involved in looking into what's going on there?
I would imagine the police chief or whoever in the department has already contacted the FBI, and the NCMEC, which is a great organization, is probably I would guess is involved. It, as Phil spoke earlier, hearing this in a vacuum, it's very difficult to just, I'd like to know what the number of kids missing from that particular area up to that point. And then I would like to know a little bit more about the history of those. And so what took place in that 2-week period. And then since then, if it's all of a sudden zero or in the average, I would say in Delaware, we didn't have, we would get a call, and we would be made known about it unless there was evidence of an abduction, right? So the FBI typically will get involved in missing children cases if there is a suspicion of an abduction. And then, of course, there needs to be that interstate nexus. But we would get involved earlier than later. I'd rather it be wrong than to say, hey, let's wait and see if there's an interstate aspect to it. So, but we would be made known of missing children. And the department would ordinarily, in that phone call, saying, hey, here's the police report, but I'm going to also let you know that this is not the first time. This is third, fourth, fifth. And so we're monitoring, we're providing resources in the sense of, hey, do you guys have an analyst that's doing a social media scrub or somebody that can help out with phones? But otherwise, other than that, we're not getting involved in. And I would say, gosh, if it was one a month, that we were involved in, that's a lot. So that's why I'm really wondering what this 27 or this, was it 27 or 30 in a span of 2 weeks?
27.
It's extremely high, but I have a feeling there's something else that's probably not being said.
Well, I'm definitely going to stay on it. I was going to get to the Menendez brothers, which we're not going to do because that will take us down another path, and Phil has to get out to tend to his horses. Jersey, Jen Castaldi. OMG, Joel. Well, my mom almost rolled down a hill in her wheelchair a few years ago. I did not know I could still run that fast. I think it was a story about my bicycle trip down the hill that made her think of that. So we will see. And a quick programming note. Sunday night, before I forget, we are going to be discussing once again the Ellen Greenberg case. The young woman in 2011 found dead, stabbed 20 times, 2, according to an independent autopsy, after she was already dead, which is hard to do if you're committing suicide, to stab yourself once you are dead. Very mysterious story. And we are going to have, it looks like someone, Pennsylvania Philly journalist on, along with Jennifer Koffendorfer, formerly of the FBI, to discuss that with Carm Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. As I like to do at this time every day, I like to wish STS Nation a very happy weekend. Amy Marta says, I can't wait for CrimeCon. Janice says, where is CrimeCon? It's in Orlando. Ketchup says, amazing, exclamation mark. People are debating whether Epstein committed suicide or murdered. It looks like they're split. Is Carm coming? Yes, she is. I'm going to, speaking of wheeling her, I'm going to wheel her in the minivan with a motor, an engine. Sarah says, that's great, guys. Will CrimeCon be live, or is that even allowed? It is live. It's all live with live human beings. So I'm excited. Baby doll weighing in. Phil, you officially moved pizza night from Friday to Saturday. You do your Bible study Friday night. Is that still the plan for tonight?
That is correct. Yes, we will be. Yes, we will be in Bible study tonight, and then tomorrow night will be. It'll be pizza night at Kingsview Cafe here in lovely Kapa'au, Hawaii.
Love that. And Scott Duffey, you talked to us about an infusion last week. Is that the name of the drink? I was going to actually try to order it.
Yeah, and I read a comment to somebody from Delaware. Corrected me if I said infusion, that I was incorrect. It is transfusion, but sometimes my Connecticut accent makes it seem like. But it's a distinct possibility.
It's transfusion.
Transfusion.
And this is vodka thing going on there.
Yeah, so it's Tito's vodka, juice. Right? Oh, okay. With any vodka would work, but it's Tito's vodka, grape juice. But as this Delawarean last week made a comment, he could add cranberry juice, absolutely any type of juice, but grape juice, Sprite.
Well, it sounds an appropriate drink for somebody from Delaware.
Yeah, I would say it's probably.
So my question is, have you ever had a laser beam?
I haven't. What is it?
Jack Daniels, Galliano, and Drambuie, and you do it in shots. And it will change your life if you do enough of them.
By the way,
I haven't done them in a long time. In fact, I don't drink anymore at all.
At all.
Okay. And if I do, it's very simple. It's Gentleman Jack on the rocks, and that's it.
That's exactly what I picture Phil having. Sarah says, Joel, I lived in northern Maine not too long ago. That's why I had a ski hat on. It got to 40 below while I lived there. I love the hat. I think you should still wear it. It looks good. Look at this. Jersey Jen. Spring tickets for CrimeCon are already sold out. The cheapest now is $349. I don't know. I think you should still come and just storm the venue. That's what I think. But Scott, are you going out and having your transfusion tonight? By the way, what I was going to say is I had dinner with my wife and another couple last week, and I was going to order the transfusion. But when I showed up to dinner with my friend Brad, great guy, we were both, and this was not planned, and I posted this on Insta, Surviving the Survivor. We both showed up to dinner wearing mint green pants, which is not a normal color, and matching white shirts and almost the same sneakers. And then in the course of this dinner, we found out we had the same birthday. We also may or may not have some OCD issues. So all these things just threw me for a loop, and I never ordered the transfusion. But that was my story about the transfusion. Anyway.
I think people watching that event might have been ordering transfusions. Both
But you know what? At that time, I would have ordered an infusion, because right. I think that's what you said, and I would have ordered it wrong. Someone here loves Phil. They said the Phil show. I love it. And I don't know. I'm just looking for comments, but I think it's probably time to say goodbye. As you can tell, I love this show. I love Fil and Scott, and I don't want to say goodbye, but I have to go. I am stalling from fatherhood right now. That is what I'm really doing. But I'm going to go be a good dad, and I'm going to turn on a TV show. I'm going to duct tape them to their sofas, couch, and
Well, you need to see if the Lamborghini's charged up and strap them in.
I have to. Phil, is duct taping your child to a couch, is that legal or illegal in 2023? I didn't say their mouths.
I don't know the legalities of it, but it is certainly a good option.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I feel better knowing that from you. So, listen, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Come join us Sunday night with Carm. She'll be here. Look at this. Why is this, Sarah? Phil, before we go, you got to. I haven't dated in over a year, and it looks like I'm not going to anytime soon. Phil, what advice do you have for Sarah before we go?
Well, I don't know, Sarah. I mean, I don't know what she is seeking.
I have no idea either, and it seems like something happened. Maybe she's a bit jaded. Would you tell her to get back on the proverbial saddle and give men another shot, or men a hopeless? Huh?
Again, I don't know if I knew I could give her some more advice. I would just be. It's rough out there. I mean, it is. I understand her plight. It's especially for as hard as it is for men to find a good woman. I think it is especially difficult for women to find a good man. And I say that with all sincerity. I'm not trying to be a smart mouth here. I really think in the world we're living in now, there's so much confusion. And I'm always reminded about the quote from Voltaire that those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And I think we're in that world today. So I would just tell Sarah to keep looking, but be careful of interwebs dating. I would say stay away from that, where you can, if you meet somebody in person from the beginning, and that. So there's a lot of bad stuff that comes out of this interwebs dating stuff.
Yeah, Phil was not swiping left or right. I wasn't even doing that. I missed the whole app dating thing. Scott Duffey, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to weigh in on the Sarah situation. Would you encourage her to get back on that saddle and give a nice man another shot, or should she just forget about men because they're despicable?
Follow your heart, and it will happen when you least expect it.
Wonderful advice. On that note, everyone follow their heart. Love you, America. Love you, Norwalk, Connecticut, and Delaware, and love you, Hawaii, and Houston. Until next time, have a great weekend.
Aloha.
Aloha.